Testing one, two, three, testing one, two, three, testing. Hello there, brave hearts, urbanites, and Coach Mad Hatters, and welcome to my Monday evening, August 3rd, 2020. And I am hopping into another series. We. If you find me and you hang with me, it's going to be we. The quote of this moment is me, we, by Muhammad Ali. I can't remember the year, but it was published as the shortest poem ever inside of the Guinness Book of Records. And yeah, right now the year escapes me. I have mixed feelings at this particular moment, and mainly because of all of the heavy hitting energy that is being ushered in through the moon, the new moon, not the new moon, the full moon in Aquarius. And as I may have mentioned before, my memories, a lot of my lines are blurred right at the moment. So I'm not sure if I've said it on recording or not, but and I probably have. Any type of heightened lunar cycle does things to my mood, my creativity, my inspiration, my ambition, my audacity. So, um, I may do quite a bit of pausing, and I know that might make some folks cringe because my series segments are long enough as it is. And it's like, Lord have mercy, girl, we'll need you be pausing and carrying on, but I can't help it. I am a conduit of the energies within the moment, and so I have to do it as I feel it. We're going to be tapping into quite a bit of natal birth chart components, and I'll be chiefly using mine as an example, but I'm throwing in others just for the sake of continuity and chemistry so that there can be a fundamental understanding of how we mix and mingle as an energetic species, as we are, in my opinion. Now, remember, you come to visit me. So, so we are not going to really do the whole stifling my commentary with the narrow mindedness of right and wrong. I'm not really debating right now. Mercury is doing some wild things, and so I am Virgo moon, Virgo ascending. So I'm double Mercury. So I am the messenger in all of my glory. And seeing as that I am wearing the badge of the student and the teacher, I'm going to have my moments, but I'm still going to walk this thing. I'm going to walk through my scholarship. And most often, I find myself in conversations where folks want to debate. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with debating. But here's the catch. It only feels worthy if I know in fact you are on your journey of soul scholarship. And more than likely, if you are, those type of folks dispel the urge to debate because they have already grown in the maturity that releases them from wanting to be right. They know that there will be moments they will be the scholar or they will be the professor. They know these things. And most often, those that have been walking it for a while know that that role can switch simultaneously, and it's innate. It's almost like there there are intuitive gears that will switch at an instant where the individual will know when it is sitting as the student or standing as the teacher, which in its natural sense dispels the urge to debate. And so, right now, because of the full moon in Aquarius, as well as my North Node being in Aquarius, I'm in my revolutionary motif right now. I am really inside. Not even to mention that my Mars is in Aries as well as my Chiron is in Aries. So I have this goddess warrior essence to me that has provoked me into a semi silent mode for the next 30 days. So, what that actually means is that I have my list of favorites. Those are the only ones that will get through as far as, uh, how can I say, as far as dialogue. Other than that, I'm going to stay true to getting out my list of recordings and readings that I have set forth for myself to achieve by the end of August, because September to me feels like it's going to be an entirely different kind of life. And so there's a lot of things that I have set for me to complete over the next 30 days. And the strictest uh, level of distractions I have set forth. So it's going to be rather interesting because I have not initiated this kind of hermit mode in a while. One of my greatest uh, items on the list is the completion of this series, which is a Coach Mad Hatter signature series titled Mr. Romantic. And the divine counterpart to this series is going to be called Mrs. Mystic. So it's a divine counterpart series, but it's in the form of Coach by Story. And so I've used uh, the power, the power of oracle cards and tarot cards to tell a story uh, within the realm of imaginal psychology, as well as patching together certain pieces from different lectures of my master teachers to incubate a concept that I've been studying over the last 24 months. And so, with all of that said, I'm going to usher in, I'm going to officially open up the series with not with a quote, yeah, a passage from Bob Marley entitled Love. He's not perfect. You aren't either. And the two of you will never be perfect. But if he can make you laugh at least once, causes you to think twice, and if he admits to being human and making mistakes, hold on to him and give him the most you can. He isn't going to quote poetry. He's not thinking about you every moment, but he will give you a part of him that he knows you can break. Don't hurt him. Don't change him. And don't expect more than he can give. Don't analyze. Smile when he makes you happy. Yell when he makes you mad. And miss him when he's not there. Love hard when there's love to be had. Because perfect guides don't exist. But there's always one or two perfect guys for you. I have been in love with Bob Marley ever since I heard my very first Bob Marley song. Without me hadn't ever, well, when I say ever, without me hadn't yet laid eyes on him. He spoke to my soul through the music that he produced. And one thing that I know is that he was a lover. After learning his story and understanding who he was as a person, he was one love manifested in human embodiment. And that's speaking it lightly. So this series came upon my heart when I had just finished an erotica series called Mr. Romantic by J.A. Huss. And I hesitate because I wonder, or I pause. We're doing hashtag pause right now. We're in the season of pause. I pause to recommend it because it is hardcore erotica. So it's not for the squeamish, it's not for the righteous, indignant folk. It's not for the ultra judgmental. It's not for those that are going to go and be appalled by the language, the explicit language that's used because they get down and dirty with it. But because, like Yasin Bey say, also known as Most Def, because I am the person that I am, because of who I am as a person. It's amazing. I was a couple days ago, I was listening to an interview with him, and I see his name. I see his face. That's crazy. Talib Kweli. So because I was doing this I don't I was doing this antiquated hip hop research and development thing because I got an intuitive hit that, and I literally willfully went down this rabbit hole trying to patch together a song versation playlist. But that's a totally different. That's another story for another time. That's a story for another time. But anywho, and he continued to lead the conversation. He made sure that throughout that entire interview, he kept the people focused on the fact that he was this sovereign soul and he is who he is according to the type of person that he is. And he made sure that that was never forgotten. He, excuse me, he threw it out there quite a bit, making sure that folks understood that he was this way or that way because of the natural essence of who he was. And he answered the questions in such a sovereignty and such a emotional independence. We never talk about that as much, especially to hear it from a black man. And yeah, okay, so yeah, okay, blackness. Ooh, I'm telling you, everything is such is in such tricky context these days. You don't know what to say, what not to say. And as I continue to mature, my vocabulary is changing too, but I still have habits, all right? But anyway, he led his conversation with making sure the folk understood that he was a highly unique being and that he was not giving out no cookie cutter answers and that he had every right, without shame or guilt, for whatever it is that he had to share with the people. It was coming from his authenticity. And so I say all of that to say that because of the way that I'm built, mainly with my black moon Lilith being in Libra, as well as my Mars being in Aries, hmm, my Pluto being in the first house, I have certain interests that the taboo police, the police of conventional taboos, would slap a label on me in an instant and call me a heathen. Que sera, sera. At the end of the day, I do a lot of research inside of erotic narratives. And I have a few authors that are so free and uninhibited with the way they flow with their storylines. It's still uncanny to me to be an individual with that type of self-expressive freedom, that type of that true sovereignty, where there are no conditions set upon the way that you express yourself. So if you find yourself one of those type of kinfolk and you're interested in it, I do recommend it because it will give enlightenment to the Mr. Romantic series. And not that we're going to be talking in explicit terms or terms of erotica, but we are going to be exploring the supporting evidence of being in true chemistry with your divine counterpart, as well as being in true chemistry with yourself. And I hit on it in the last series, mostly because my conversations are always somehow hooked or anchored in the taboos or the inhibitions around sexuality. And as I've made mention many, many times, 20 years in a beauty barber salon. So I've stood behind the chair, engaged in countless conversations. And because of who I am as a person, I'm inquisitive. And I am, at this point in my life, a professional conversationalist. I have logged in my 10,000 hours with regards to engaging conversations. But I have to feel it. I have to, my intuitive nature has to become curious about the being that sits across from me in order for me to engage. And I giggle sometimes about, I want to say about a week or so ago, me and my stepmom's sister, we were sitting on the front porch and we were having a conversation. And my dad and my stepmom have been together for over 20 years. So I've known my stepmom's sister for quite a while. And um, she is, um, I don't even know what the, like, I hate when I say that they are old hair clients because they're not old. I always get hung up when I try to say that they were, whomever I'm speaking about, they were clients of mine. And now it's like even though I'm not standing behind the chair or they're not coming to the salon anymore, our conversations, the quality of our conversations are still as robust as if we were in the salon. And she giggled to me. She says, sitting with you always seems to bring out these emotions that I am not always willing to expose to other people. She's like, in your conversations, you have a way of bringing certain things out in folk. And so we touched on some rather tender topics, and she got a bit teary eyed. And see, one thing about me is I am an advocate of hand holding, and I am an advocate of being a shoulder for you to cry on. And I think that has a lot to do with my moon being in the first house, as well as my Pluto being in the first house. Even with it being conventionally, I can't think of another word right now, opposing energies or conflicting, well, not even conflicting, but just not like compatible. No, that's not the word either. Please forgive me. Um, but they have the moon and Pluto sometimes, even in their archetypal characteristics, have they are very they're almost polar opposites in the energies that may be personified within one's being. With them both living in my first house, or with them both being represented in my first house, I most often identify as the Hulk. I have even on some occasions been called, what is it, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, or the other way around, I don't know. And even when that comes in some form of critique, I have to giggle because I have to let folks know I have multiple personalities adjacent to this being. And I am not going to let conventional psychology tell me that something's wrong with me. I am a conduit of a multitude of non physical beings that line up to speak through me. If only we knew what our connectivity looked like in non physical spaces. All of these distractions would have you believe that the most of your being is through the physical spaces. I beg to differ. Because of that, I am aiming to put forth the concept around the black man who understands his birth chart and how, through that lens, there is a certain quality of romance and renaissance that's emerging. Does this mean he's going to be wearing his heart on his sleeve and going to be traipsing around town being this ultra emotional being? No. But it does mean that he's going to find emotional sovereignty to the point where those that he is meant to be openly affectionate with, he will be. And it is going to be instances of magically deliciousness, like epic. So all of that to say, oh, yeah, this might be long-winded. You might want to pause it and go get you something to drink and get your notebook and your pencils and current on. The storyline, Mr. Romantic, was exhilarating to say the least. It took me through a myriad of emotions that one moment I was so fucking mad at the dude. I was like, this dominance thing is working my fucking nerves. Like, there's nowhere in the world I would even hold conversation with this dude. Just out of control with it. But then I had to suspend my judgments and just allowed the storyline to speak to me. And it's quite interesting because even inside the storyline, what he continued to say was that you have a safe word and you are empowered to use that safe word whenever you want. And I will stop, or this will cease, or whatever have you. He says, but also the alternative is to trust the process. It's going to get a little yucky before it gets better. But if we get through the yucky parts, if we get through the growing pains, if we get through the fields of unfamiliarity, there will be something golden in the end. And this is what he was saying to the woman who ended up being his divine counterpart. Was it choppy in the beginning? Yeah, very, very. But the remarkable part about the storyline is that I could feel the emotionality of him and her, as well as his cranky ass sister, and even the masculine support of his homies. Like I could. It was just some wonderful writing. Um, I can't say it was particularly realistic for me because I don't live in privileged white America. So I'm not sure what that part of life is like. But I do know what it's like to be prematurely judged or judged wrong or judged out of proper context. And one thing that I know for certain is that when we give way to trying to communicate in these little snippets, aka text messages, without allowing proper context, so much is being robbed of our moments to communicate properly or to gain a better understanding. Even the power in the tone of voice is missing when we try to have the important dialogues over text messaging or email or any type of printed communication. And in my opinion, it's doing us a disservice to those that we are meant to be trusting and bonding with. So that's where this that was the inspiration to this series. Mainly because in the end, she did find the wherewithal to allow the trust to emerge when in the beginning he gave her every reason to not trust him. And she went through her moments of, should I even be doing this? Do I need to be cut? I just need to kick him to the curb. Why am I doing this? What is it about me to have me entertaining this? Why am I so fucking intrigued by him? What's going on? What is this tug on my heart? Why can't I just get him off my mind and be done with it? Like the whole back and forth of the inner dialogue that goes on in the woman or the man when you're in a situation when you're in a situation that challenges you to find the authenticity in your interest or in that more deeper thing that you can't readily put words to. You can just feel it. And so that the storyline has rendered itself one of my favorites. Um, and I think in the show notes, I am going to attach a few. Um, but there is one in addition to Mr. Romantic, there is one, and there's one particular storyline. Well, two. Oh, how did I forget about this? Okay, there are two storylines that I have included in the transcript that is uh, or that has proven itself adequate reference to what it is that we will be discussing throughout the series. Because sometimes I think we do be looking for, and when I say we, I'm talking about the women, be looking for the dude to show up storybook ready to render us our happily ever after. Most often, in addition to just my natural interest in erotica, the stories that I find myself attracted to gives me the full scope of the good and the bad. It's a realistic mixture of the the monomyth of the hero's journey, where the acquaintance stretches you into discomfort. And while you're there, you find bits and pieces of yourself that you didn't realize was in need of healing, in need of reflection, in need of highlighting or contouring or whatever have you. As a result of dealing with this person, you now can see you have a different view. You have a different angle, a view of yourself. And then it contracts. It expands. At first it makes it difficult, makes it unnerving at best, and then it contracts back where you're closer together, and that's really where the hearts meet. And so it's like it mimics the pulsing of the heart where it expands and contracts and expands and contracts. The ebbs and flows of energy while you're dealing with somebody that completely puts you in vulnerable spaces, but also validates and also vets and also exhilarate. So inside of one of these lectures, I'm in my Bobby Hemmett series, just in case you'd be wondering why I am always mentioning him. This is my Bobby Hemmett series season. This is usually when I tap in, getting prepared for autumn and winter. Those are my more busier seasons because as an intuitive coach, that's when folks buckle down to study. That's when they really, outside of the year long study or the year long scholar, those are the serious, usually those who are in soul scholarship does not have summer breaks. Let me just say that. Those that are on the track of learning themselves by themselves or are in very intimate fellowship with just a handful of others who are walking that track. It's a year long academic venture before the uh, greater for the outer limits of learning cycles. Usually, um, an increase of studyship ensues right as the regular academic year begins, and that's usually when it gets busy, where folks become or return their focus back to. Okay, I'm grabbing at words. Da. Okay, let's pause for a minute because I have to recenter myself. Okay, so Mr. Romantic, and this theme works out perfectly for me because I was inside of preparation to begin presenting my concept around the rekindling of a thing called the urban renaissance. And so the base word, the root word is rebirth, renaissance meaning rebirth. Naissance is birth, so rebirth, renaissance. So the urban romance and renaissance is a concept that I have been striving to bring revision to, asking those that are within the arts and poetic justice and the writers, especially the songwriters, like just those that I know personally, just asking them to tap into this focus and see if there's any type of creativity waiting for them, if they would be able to find time to expand efforts in research and developing this concept from this particular angle. And I'll say this, I just bumped into the story of Mr. Romantic less than 7 days ago. But because, thanks to my sleepless nights with the arrival of this full moon and it being an audiobook version, I was actually able to hit this 9 hour audiobook in one setting, believe it or not. It was an overnighter. Um, and usually when this happens, I will binge on something. Um, and so the storyline of Mr. Romantic was it. And I'm glad because it propelled me into the composition of this series. So, Brother Bobby Hemmett has this. Uh, well, let me say this, okay? Because I'm not. I found a clip. I found a 10-minute clip of a lecture, and I'm not sure what the formal title is, but I'm going to link the clip. I'm going to link the clip in the show notes so that you can listen to it. It's 10 minutes, but it's amazing at all of the soul driven ingredients inside of the 10 minutes. Now, I have inside of the transcript for this series highlighted the timestamps. So, only for the serious will you be able to, for one, find the motivation to tap into this highly concentrated 10 minutes of, I'm pretty sure, probably a 3 or 4 hour lecture. But inside this 10 minutes renders you all of the PowerPoints to this series. I took the liberty to put also inside the transcript the main avenue by which Mr. Romantic will be fortified in his relationship with his divine counterpart, who is Mrs. Mystic. And so the quote is this. Bobby Hemmett says this: if you study the ancient goddess, she'll have the time when she's a nurturer, she'll have a time when she's a protector, a wife, and time when she's a sensual being. And she'll have a time when she's a warrior. If we are in the last days, the house has burnt down. It's time for the warrior to emerge. Now, what's interesting about Mr. Romantic is that he's actually the urban knight. He's the brave heart. He's damn near the Coach Mad Hatter if you really think about it. And maybe you'll be able to see those hues of his personality as we continue to move through this series. Coach by Story is also a concept that I've been incubating and been honestly hovering over it, not really wanting to release it into the world. Mainly because those that are within my inner circles are not really, um, they not really like hardcore story consumers. Most folks will approach a story to be entertained. And I am completely the opposite. I arrive at a story looking for the clues and the cues that will coincide and synchronize with whatever it is that I'm going through or dealing with at any particular time. And it's to include insight regarding certain people, places, and things. And I have to say, as long as I've been doing this, which has been over 10 years, it has never let me down. I am very particular about what I will sit in front of. And that's, I think, what is it? What is that? What the, I want to say like the protective energy around how I bump into certain storylines, certain films, certain themes in motion picture, or even in audiobook. Almost instantly, I can tell if a story is going to strike a chord. And this is with my music as well, because I'm not going to just listen to anything, and I'm not going to just view anything. I'm highly protective of what I allow in to my ears and my eyes. And I have set the intention into my non-physical spaces, those beings that can see my future before I get wind of it. And I let them know immediately, yeah, give me my intuitive hit to tell me, sit with it, don't sit with it. Like, yeah, I be waiting on that. And many times I've sat in front of something and initially didn't like it, and my intuitive hit will say, sit with it until the end. Or I will see a movie or a film or something, and the storyline didn't really tickle my fancy, or I didn't get a good understanding of it. And somewhere along the way, it'll pop back up, and I'll get the intuitive hit to say, visit with it again. Go back and see. There's something in there. Something like that. So there's always an inner running dialogue with me when I sit with story or song or poetry or art or whatever have you. Lectures. Yeah. So that takes us to the last two storylines. Um, and I'm trying to figure out how I want to guide you through. Um, because even though I gave mention to the inspiration around how the Mr. Romantic series came to be, I don't necessarily wish for you. Well, you could do it however you want, but and for the sake of better understanding this series, especially since this introduction is so choppy, and I'm honestly grabbing at words to try to bring forth the main idea. Save Mr. Romantic for after the fact or in your spare time or unless you are just intrigued. There's a story by Nalini Singh that is entitled Stroke of Enticement. Now, here's the key: pay close attention to the letter to Santa. And it's at the very beginning. It's the first thing you'll hear is a little kid's reading of her letter to Santa. Pay very close attention to the letter and what it is that she wished for. That's going to give you some insight to the archetypal nature of Mr. Romantic. And I would even say, because this is a short story, so, and I'm going to link the audiobook, and it's about 2.5, maybe 3 hours long. It's a very it's still a how can I say it? It's a soft erotica, but this has more storyline and more plotting and more uh, companionship and chemistry than it does the explicit scenes. But there are still some in there. Um, Stroke of Enticement. If I had to choose the core storyline by which I will be coaching this series, it will be Stroke of Enticement. That's one of my most favorite short stories uh, inside of erotica quality ever. Like, I've listened to this more times than I care to admit, just because it tugs on my heart. It hops, skips, and jumps inside of my enchantments. I love that story, as well as the storyline Deal with the Devil by Evangeline Anderson. Now, that one, Honey, that's a dark, that's a heavy story. It's erotica, but it's heavy. But understanding how to deal with one's shadows and understanding what it's like when you love somebody who's been accused of some heinous shit, but you know in your heart that the story isn't really truly the way that folk will have it, and that folks like to allow their imaginations to have way. These assumptions making asses out of everybody. And she still stood firm with her intrigue and curiosity and being true to that which she knew she loved. Even though everybody around her had all of these opinions about shit they knew nothing about. They knew absolutely nothing. And so the course of this series, even with the supporting evidence inside of our concepts of story, coach by story, we're going to find out by the end of the series that those that you love do have streaks of romance, but usually it gets stomped on and stifled when you got all these opinions from folks who don't know a fucking thing about what's going on with your union. And that sometimes only that love that has that emotional sovereignty to say, this is between me and him, or this is between me and her, and all of these outside distractions, we're going to mute and we're going to focus on us. And if we decide we not going to get it on anymore, then that's the way it's going to be. And begin to demand certain respectful reciprocity around folk that swear they care about you, but don't want to sit and listen to what's actually unfolding with you or what's unfolding with your divine counterpart. Because trust me when I say, none of the stories, even the snippet in Bobby Hemmett's Darth, the Energy of the Matrix and the Sewer, even in even in that small snippet, none of it is pixie dust and unicorns. It's all heavy, weighty shit that folks must confront and hash out and reconcile in order for them to get to the center of the Tootsie Roll Pop. Wasn't none of them frolicking in the fields of daisies. And so, if you do find yourself in front of any of these recommendations, especially for the livelihood of supporting evidence for this series, please note that you are searching for the identifiers that will give you solace or give you ingenuity around how you can be the best divine counterpart you can while you face the fuckery of your present day unfoldings. Because when I tell you that the stellium of energy around astrological planetary transits that's permeating in this time and space, this day and age, they ain't coming to fuck around. Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter are the most heaviest hitters of the cosmic belt. And when they show up, they don't come to play. So anything that's built, houses of straw, houses of glass, yeah, it's getting shaken up. It's getting shaken up and it's going to be tossed in the eye of the whirlwind of this energetic sensation that we are now contending with. And you'll have to face off with your true self. And your true self knows if whatever it is that you're engaged in is worth its weight in gold. And you're going to unlatch from some stuff and you're going to hook up with other stuff. And the characteristics around Mr. Romantic is really not what the societal norms have presented to us. And we have to save space and make way for that. In true honesty, understanding that whomever your divine counterpart is, they're not going to be perfect. And even in storybooks and fairy tales and inside of enchanted portals, there are shortcomings and mismanagement of emotions, but there's also reconciliation and respect and reciprocity and romance and renaissance. And so that's what I'm hoping that the series does. I'm hoping that as we walk this journey of intellectual value, that somehow, some way, the messages and the clues and the cues and the signals and the signs and the symbols that are supposed to meet and greet you while you try to clear up some things, reconcile some things, make way with some things, that they find their way to you. You find your way to them, and somehow this comprehensive union comes to be and blossoms and emerges, this new birth, this transmutation, as the alchemists love to call it. I've been studying the alchemist, the archetypal characteristics of the alchemist. Yeah, that's a mouthful. I've been studying them for a while now, and there are certain catchphrases that they will toggle around in the lab when they are on the hunt to further expand the understanding around how they change base metals, that heavy shit, into golden elixirs of life, life elixirs, that shit that heals masses. That's what the alchemists do. That's why they give their lives to the lab. They about that lab life. Why? Because there is this transmutation of energy that is stellar. I can't think of another word. That is all inclusive, and it's not necessarily to the healing of your physical body, but it heals all of the sensations of your non physical body. Because remember, at the end of the day, this physical body belongs to this realm. You literally have to leave the suit inside the realm. The suit belongs to the realm. So the body not yours. It has to return back to Gaia. It's almost like, where they say when well, okay, so it's vice versa. I was about to say, take your shoes off. Like you. Okay, I'm not. I can't do it. It's late. It's past my bedtime. I'm going to end it here. Inside the show notes, you will have the links to the stories that I mentioned. You will also have access to the transcript, which is a lot more clear than the ramblings of this introduction. As well as some keywords and a layout of tarot cards that we will follow as we migrate through this series to give us understanding. Also, there is a prologue to a story that I am unfolding, a signature Coach Skylar Indigo Inc. story that is finding its maturity, its growth, its nurturing, and so I also decided that I will give exclusive sneak peeks into that story as we go through this series, as well as the Mrs. Mystic series that will be following immediately after the completion of this one. Also, in the transcript is a way to get in contact with me should you have any questions or you want to just stop by with some ideas and that kind of thing. There are a few images that support the journey and journaling series for the Mystic Food and Shiro Heroes 42-week journaling series. Then that's going to be massive, and that's one of the reasons why I am in semi silence mode, just meditating and getting prepared to host the that journaling series because I know that's going to be epic. I know that's going to be epic. Even if I have to travel that by myself, which I have, I may mention. So this go round is my sophomore cycle. I did my freshman cycle solo. And I have all the journals to boot from March 1st to when did we stop? And I say we meaning me, myself, and I. Oh, I got it. It was just July 19th. So yeah, honey. Now that was only 21 weeks. And that's because I didn't have all these add-ons. It's been extended because of all that I learned from that journey. And so now that I am inviting companions, I figured that it would be a lot more valuable if I tagged on some of the things that I learned through my first go round onto my sophomore cycle. So hopefully it's going to resonate with some folks and they begin to sign up so that we can go head on and become enlightened, golden enlightened. Yes. So yeah, there's quite a bit inside the transcript. So I want to say take your time and become one with it, as well as tap in and out of the references that I have provided. I do not have a timeline on when each session or segment is going to post. I have no idea how many sessions will be in this series. I'm just going to allow the energy and the moment to have its way with me. When I get intuitive hits to say, begin to cultivate, I'm going to cultivate. When it says get up and record, I'm going to record. When it says post, I'm going to post. When it says this is the last season, or I mean the last segment of the series, then I'll make the announcement it is the last segment of the series. And that's how we're going to do this thing. So yeah, so thanks for joining me. Um, and I'm just scrolling through here to make sure that I haven't forgotten anything. But one thing I know for certain that even if I did, the transcript has it all. I'm quite pleased with this transcript. So um, I hope you give it some undivided attention and it renders you some good information. And so until next time, I wish you well.